Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. Tehami. The International Monetary Fund expects Pakistan's economy to perform better in the current and the next fiscal year. In its World Economic Outlook for October, the IMF has forecast 2.5% growth in the current year and 5% in the next fiscal year. Now, earlier there'd been forecasts by other multilateral organizations, including the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. Now, these predictions, which have been made by the International Monetary Fund, are different from earlier predictions of the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. We'll discuss with our panelists as how and why these predictions of the IMF are different from those that were made by Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. Also, we'll be discussing the projections regarding other important things, including inflation, unemployment, and the population growth in this particular World Economic Outlook of the IMF. Also, we have seen the trend of increase of the value of Pakistani rupee against the dollar continues, as Pakistani rupee traded at 279.43 against the greenback in the interbank market today and at 280 in the open market. We'll be discussing with our panelists the factors which have contributed to this particular continuous trend of increase of value of Pakistani rupee against the dollar and its impact on exporters and importers as well. Also, in another major development, the caretaker Prime Minister, Mr. Anwarul Haq Kakad, has directed to expedite the privatization process, particularly of Pakistan International Airlines, as well as other loss-making state-owned enterprises. How crucial is this particular step regarding steering the country out of difficult economic times? We'll be discussing that also with our panelists. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Manzoor Ahmad. He is trade arbitrator at the World Trade Organization and also the member of the Task Force on Tax and FBR Reforms. Dr. Manzoor, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Ms. Tawfik, Vice President Research Arif Habib Limited. Ms. Hannan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Now, Dr. Manzoor, let's begin the discussion with this particular trend of Pakistani rupee continues to gain value against the greenback. First of all, shed a little bit of light. What major factors do you think the crackdown against smuggling and hoarding of the dollars has led to this continuous trend of increase of value of PKR against the greenback?
Yes, I think that's one big factor. But the other one is that there was expectations that the worst time are going to come. I mean, once Pakistan opens up its imports, because Pakistan had kind of completely put a restriction on imports, and IMF had asked that Pakistan should open up. So there was expectation that once Pakistan opens up, there'll be more outflow of dollars, and so the dollar might go. So there was speculation in the market that dollar is going to go down, and that's what was happening. So that got reversed. But these two or three major elements.
So what are the other major elements other than these two you just have mentioned?
Well, I think then there was that some economic indicators were expected to be better than they were originally anticipated. For example, I can tell you about this, like you just mentioned about IMF's projection. There were indicators that this will be so. I mean, originally nobody thought Pakistan's GDP growth is going to go beyond 2%, neither the World Bank, nor the State Bank, nor others. But then some things start changing. First, our major crops. I think we are expecting one of the biggest cotton crops for the last many years. You recall last year it has gone down to about 5.6 million bales. This year, they have so much, and they expect the whole year's to be double, so 12 million bales, and that's one thing. Then our wheat is expected to beat all previous records. In the last few years, we have been importing huge quantities of wheat. This year, we expect the quantum to exceed 28 million tons. The third major crop, Pakistan's crop, rice, we normally don't exceed 2 billion in exports. This year, we are expected to pass 3 billion. So all these factors, and I can also show you that after a long time, FPR was kind of their targets were fixed in a way that they couldn't really achieve them. But already in this first quarter, they've surpassed that target. And the good thing is that it's not collected all from imports or anything. It's the big jump in income tax. It shows an increase of about 40% over the same period last year.
Right, so I'll come to ask you what were the measures actually taken by FPR regarding getting this increase in the beyond that target that was set. Let me proceed to Ms. Sana. Ms. Sana, what's your understanding regarding the factors which have contributed to a continuous increase of Pakistani rupee's value against the dollar we have recently seen?
Right, so it's mentioned sort of strict measures taken by the authorities to curb the illegal outflows. This has practically dismantled, you can say, the grey market that was playing a pivotal role in the valuation of the currency. And this has also forced, you can say, the speculators to go underground and also channelize inflows and outflows of the dollar. We have seen in the recent past that exporters are now selling their proceeds in the interbank, which they had earlier held outside, and they were waiting for rupee to devalue further and then bring them back. So one factor has led to the other. And also, of course, we saw that people who were speculating this further devaluation currency, they were hoarding dollars. They have also come into the market and selling dollars now. And lastly, of course, without any doubt, a few economic indicators rightly pointed that they are now showing signs of recovery. Like IMF is expecting rather that Pakistan will grow at a rate of around 2.5% GDP. So somewhere some policies or some, you can say, measures taken by the authorities, they are reaping results now. If you talk about agriculture, that is mainly supporting the overall economic recovery. And Sir has already mentioned about all the important crops that have shown improvement compared to last year. And also, once we are expecting inflation to gradually come down in the upcoming months, especially due to base effect. That will also help the overall, I would say, macroeconomic institutions to reconsider their tight policies. And especially when we talk about macroeconomic policies, I would mention over here the monetary policy. We have already seen unprecedented rate of policy rate being around 22%. Obviously, with inflation coming down, and State Bank itself has been saying that we are already in a positive real interest rate territory. So I think we will probably see this tight monetary policy shifting to probably accommodative and then probably easing in the latter half of this year. So all these factors will slowly and gradually definitely help recover economy, and hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, we might be recording an improved growth rate, and probably might be closing this fiscal year at a rate slightly higher than 2.5%.
Right, Ms. Sana, when we talk about this continuous increase of Pakistani rupee's value against the dollar, do you see this particular trend sustaining in the coming months also?
All right, so in the short run, we may see this PCR strengthening due to the ongoing measures taken by the regulators. However, obviously, as the economy has opened up, we have opened up in ports as well. Being in an IMF program, IMF is very particular and very clear about uplifting of all the import restrictions. So, although I'm not expecting import to be open completely, we might see, because we cannot afford to import the way we were importing earlier, our reserves don't allow that, right? So we will see imports going up, and that will obviously result in an outflow of dollar. And on the other hand, we have debt repayments. Let's not forget that during this fiscal year 24, state bank states that we have to make a payment of around 21 billion, out of which 11 billion we are expecting to be rolled over. But however, still there are around 8 billion that we need to pay. So those payments are due in the next month. So we have got debt repayments, we have got import payments, and on the other hand, export, obviously, the growth has been sluggish due to global factors, global recession, and global slowdown, I would say, and global inflationary pressures and commodity prices going up. Obviously, we don't see a major uptick in exports. So all these factors will definitely, in a longer run, lead to some pressure on the PCR, and we might see PCR, this winning streak of rupee might be ending sooner, if not later.
Right. Dr. Manzoor, do you see a sustainability of this trend in the coming months?
Dollar, yes. You know, it's often it's very difficult to foresee the movement of currency, but what we have seen the trend, the market expects that to continue. You know, we are somewhere about 280 rupees to a dollar, and the expectation is that the real value is about 250 rupees. So it might keep going, you know, keep its value the same trend.
So do you think it also depends, the sustainability of this trend basically depends upon the review by the IMF, which is due in November also?
Yes, I mean, IMF review is extremely important because the market confidence goes by how IMF views our economy. That's an important factor. But the other important factor is that there is expectation that some funds from our friendly countries would start flowing in, some investment for agriculture and other purposes. So there's that expectation as well.
Right. Ms. Sana, what's your understanding regarding this particular factor? Do you think this sustainability, this trend would sustain? It is dependent on the review by the IMF, which is due in November.
Agree to the whole IMF program. So IMF has been saying this time and again that you need to keep this your exchange rate regime free and floating. So you cannot fix the rate. It's not fixed. I'm not saying it's fixed. It can go either way, up or down. But keeping that in mind and the factors that I mentioned earlier, I think in the short term, like I said earlier, that PCR might strengthen and yes, can go up, can go as high as 250 or 250 against dollar. But I think in the medium term, it all depends on the economic fundamentals, especially the forex reserve level. And of course, the IMF program review that is due in November, and of course, the timely materialization of inflows from multilateral and bilateral institutions, and obviously the timing of payment. So all these factors need to be taken into consideration before commenting on the sustainability of level. But for time being, this sentiment-driven recovery would continue for sure.
Right, Dr. Manzoor, you earlier mentioned that the target which had been set by FBR because of an increase that was 40% in the income tax. Now, how FBR was able to do that and achieve that target?
I mean,
were there any specific different measures this time around taken for that matter?
Well, yes. One, they've been able to increase the number of filers through administrative measures and through tightening the net, through getting more data, you know, through collecting various databases, etc. But I should just clarify that income tax is one, but there was an increase in I think it was about 16% in domestic sales tax, and then federal excise duty, more than 50% increase in federal excise duty. So all these combined together that resulted in FBR's surpassing the target.
So overall, it was 40%.
Income tax.
Income tax was 40%.
Was about 41%, and something else was 16%, something 59%, and I think they surpassed the target by about 20% or something. I don't remember the exact
figure. So the major measure the FBR has taken is to make the people filer through getting the better data, the collection of the data.
Getting better collection of data, and also the rich have been, in a way, they're kind of now bound to declare. I mean, even if you have overseas property, you have to declare. So that brought in a lot more people in the net. So
do you think this is a heartening progress on the part
of
FBR?
Yes, it's very good progress, and hopefully the finance minister, they just set up a task force for further refining all these factors to improve the tax, and that would have its own results.
So what else is required to make it more refined?
I think this digitization, the quicker they do, and the Ministry of IT is making also efforts, the more they're able to link with NADRA data, with the banks and other things, the more there's linkage, the more the people, it will be difficult for people to escape out of the tax net.
Right, Ms. Sana, what's your understanding regarding how do you see this particular achievement on the part of FBR by taking different administrative measures, increasing the tax revenue?
Right. So first quarter was FBR was able to successfully surpass the target, and as mentioned, definitely it was mainly due to the direct taxation that exceeded the target by almost. Last month it was up by 30%, and overall it was somewhere around 18% growth that we have seen in the last quarter, outgoing quarter. So definitely Reliance has been and has always been on the direct taxation, but this time around, obviously, we are seeing measures taken by the authorities to bring more people into the tax net. However, as we have been saying this time and again, that it's about time you need to tax the untaxed, and obviously to document, to make it easy for the filer to file the returns, and to shift towards digitization of digitization of the whole filing process, to make it user friendly, make it friendly for the filer and encourage.
When you talk of making the process simpler and easier for the people to file their returns, what are the difficulties people usually face regarding that?
So, firstly, I think the awareness needs to be there. Like I'm a filer myself, but I know, since I know what tax treatment does my salary has to be, accounted for, and all other things. A layman, a person who is not aware of all the taxation process, is not aware of the fact that how to file a return, is not even aware, is not even literate enough to, you can say, have a proper setup where he or she can file his or her return, is not aware of the website of FBR. So all these nitty-gritties need to be taken into account and should be considered, and awareness should be made so that people know that all you need to do is file whatever, declare whatever you have earned during the year or you have expensed out. So I think awareness plays an important role. A, B, make it very easy. Your CNIC, your whole data should be linked with your CNIC. For example, if I am filing a return, I need to calculate all the little taxes such as withholding, although they are linked to a certain extent, but it does not bring a complete picture when I go to the website, right? So it should be completely integrated and well integrated and updated, and it should be easy so that for a person, for a common man, he or she can file the return himself. And the data should be there available on the website, and also it should be, there should be some, you can say it should be on your smartphone. Why even use a website? You can do that on a smartphone, but it takes a whole lot of time to make sure that you're not missing out on anything. you need to have a proper wealth statement, you need to be aware of all the expenses. So I think all this data should be linked with the CNIC of a citizen, and data should be there. All you need to do is just click and submit your return for the year. This I'm talking about a person who seriously wants to get to be a filer, and it should be the whole process should be easy, and there should be workshops and I would say awareness seminars for an individual to make them realize that being a filer, you are being a non-filer versus being a filer. There's a huge difference in the taxation. You are taxed double if you are a non-filer. So these perks and benefits should be made aware, and people should be the whole process, the whole application should be user-friendly.
Right, Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, do you think educating people on such a larger scale would be quite a possibility for the authorities? If not, do you think people also face difficulties in filing the returns because of the technicalities involved and the jargon of the entire gamut?
Yes, I mean, all these problems are there. It's Pakistan's tax return, you know, you must have come across, and I've done it. It's not easy. It's not easy for yourself to do it as you can do it in some other countries. Here you have to engage a tax lawyer for this purpose. So simplification would help. The other thing, I think the FBR is working on a strategy to, I mean, make it, what they're planning is that each district should have a revenue officer, okay, whose job is not really assessment, but whose job is to give this education, this you know, to give people knowledge about taxation, how to do, what not to fail. So that would be, I think, very helpful. And so the target is to increase the filers by 1 million. You know, it's a huge target. And another, I think, big thing they're trying to do is that they're going to put special teams to get lots of tax litigation in courts and tax tribunals, etc. They're trying to get these people to expedite those cases. So any revenue struck up should be expedited. So they're working on several targets.
So earlier you also mentioned that this time around there were 3 major crops that had a bigger yield than expected.
Yes.
It included cotton, wheat and rice. So often when we talk about taxing the agricultural sector, what is the state of affairs currently with this particular sector in particular, and what's more required to take more yield in the form of taxes from this agricultural sector?
Unfortunately, there's some constitutional requirements which will be very difficult for the caretaker government to because the agricultural revenue is more assigned to provincial governments, and their effort has not been you know, quite up to the standards. I mean, they've not really been. It's still continues to be very low.
But what is the endemic issue with collecting the taxes from this particular sector? Does it have to do with calculating the real income of the per acre yield?
No, it's the law. It's the law, because there's first there's huge exemption under the agriculture sector. You know, it's about, I think I wouldn't like to make a guess, but 70–80% is exempted anyway. You know, because below a certain holding they're exempt, no matter how much income, but that's exempt. And the other problem is,
don't you think the real income varies every
yes,
particular
yes,
season?
it varies. That's
there
one.
There is a certain bar regarding
yes,
how much yield do you get every season.
Yes,
so it becomes really, in fact, impossible to calculate the real income out of it.
It is possible, but there has never been any serious effort because you know, feudal lobby, they made sure that you know, there's no one touches this, because this has to go through some legislative process to do all this, and this has not been possible so far. So this sector enjoyed almost complete exemption. Maybe they contribute only 1%
So when you speak of the bumper crops happening like cotton, wheat and rice this time around, don't you think more dividends should be coming out of this time around to give more revenue to the national exchequer?
Yes, there should be, but the thing is that they will bring more money for these farmers. You see, our poverty has been increasing. Poverty levels has been increasing. You know, by about 2007-8, I think they were about 17%. They're reduced from for the last few years. They were coming down, but since then, from 2008 onwards, they have been increasing. Now they've reached 40%. So to squeeze more was not easy because the poverty is going up, inflation is going up. So it, you know, okay, this year maybe, and also this crop situation is improved in the last 1 year. I mean, the previous year it was only for 5.6 million bales. This year it has doubled.
But was it because of the floods last year?
It was because of floods. That was one big reason. But for the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, almost 10 years ago, we had 14 million bales. But then it was all the time, we never reached 10, 12 million bales. And this is the first year that we'll be reaching that.
Right, Ms. Sana, what's your understanding regarding how to get maximum dividend out of the agriculture sector? What's your understanding regarding the endemic issue that the authorities in Pakistan couldn't get that much out of this particular sector in particular?
All right. So the cultural part, the culture, this whole thing, as was mentioned, is a subject. So I think first thing that needs to be done is what we can do is get the FCR involved as well. But unfortunately, there has been structural issues, especially in this sector. We all know about the middleman issue. So first of all, I think structurally we need to reform the sector. We need to get rid of the middleman. And the problem, I think, to a certain extent will be solved when this middleman is removed and a farmer and the end user, they are directly connected, obviously through some institution or through some wholesaler. But so first problem is to reform the sector and to bring about structural reform. Secondly, instead of introducing or having land-related taxes, I think there should be, as you mentioned, should be taxes paid to the state. You will be taxed as per the yield that you are producing, and rightly so that since we are expecting improved yield this year, especially in the important crops like cotton, rice, and wheat. So I think just imagine the amount of tax we would have collected had we had this agriculture tax in place by now. Also, we can propose to have different rates and slabs for taxing agricultural income. Like, for example, we can, for the small farmers having income below a certain threshold, they can come under a protected category. The ones who are exempted from taxation, while those with a higher income, they may have to pay gradually increasing tax rate for different income slabs. So, so we have seen such slabs in Punjab and Sindh, if I'm not wrong, in Sindh as well. So, if you just assume that there's a average tax rate of, let's say, 10% on agricultural income claimed for exemption, then the total agricultural income tax should have been more than 8 billion, you can say, on the income in excess to the 82 billion that is projected if these taxes are implemented in the true spirit. So I think these all these factors, and also the point I was mentioning earlier, to link selection and to bring in FDR in this tax selection, I think that will also at least help to improve the selection part of the the collection part of taxation, and also this way we will be able to at least bring in more people into the tax net. And but again, that's again a debatable topic, bringing in SDR when subject under consideration is a provincial subject. So that needs to be looked into. So yeah, these are a few measures that can be taken to protect the agriculture output.
Right, Ms. Sana, when you talk of the role of the middleman and you speak of connecting the farmer to the end user, could you shed a little bit of light regarding this particular matter? What will this particular elimination of this particular middleman will have regarding getting more dividends out of it?
Right. So a farmer right now, the farmer right now does not have access to the end user or the market, I would say. So he is unaware of the correct or the actual market price at which his crop is being sold for. So he barely earns a certain amount that is not even sufficient for him to survive in these tough economic conditions. So once the market, the farmer is connected with the market, he will be aware of the market value, and accordingly, that will itself motivate him to improve his or her yield. And of course, then we will see people coming up with solutions such as improving crop yield by introducing, and I'm sure people with those people who see potential in this area, which obviously agriculture has a potential. We might see private investments coming through in form of you can say let's suppose hybrid seeds, the new technology that we need to bring in, and that will eventually result in improved yields. So private investments and as well as farmer being connected with the end user, knowing what the end user is willing to pay for the crop he is producing. And one issue over here is that farmers, the practice is the middleman provides concessionary loans to the farmers. And so what we can do is the role of microfinancing is important over here. And we need to encourage our institutions, financial institutions, to look into this area, though we know the banks are pursuing and also investing in this area and also lending out to the farmers. And we have these microfinance banks. We do have windows of commercial banks that are solely dedicated to this area. But I think more needs to be done. And with government intervention, with proper policy, with proper incentives to both, to the farmer as well as to the institutions providing loans to the farmers, I think it will be a win-win situation for both the parties.
Right, Dr. Manzoor, the role of the middleman, and what's your understanding, the points which have been mentioned by Ms. Sana regarding connecting the farmer to the end user?
Well, there are inefficiencies in our market, and middlemen makes use of that. I mean, they buy when the prices are at the lowest, and then they hoard it, and then they sell it in the market. So there's a problem there.
So the hoarding takes place at this particular stage?
Well, there's one of there, yes, because they purchase it and they wouldn't let, because they have the money, they have holding power. So they don't sell it till they get the right price. And I think the other problem is that in some crops like wheat and sugar, maybe less so in sugar, but there's government also intervenes a lot. I mean, the procurement price, and some people misuse that procurement price. So the farmers don't get that procurement price, but this middle people who are able to get from the government and then not really pass on. There is that problem of middlemen, yes.
So how to address that? Is there any mechanism this could be addressed?
Well, you see, first, I think the government should try to reduce its role in these procurement, etc. Because in the crops that they don't have a role, like maize, like even rice, the problem is much less compared to, say, wheat or sugar. where you always see this hoarding and black marketing, etc. So the government needs to reduce its role. And then the government, maintains a huge stock, and then quite a bit of it gets wasted. So, I mean, that would be my suggestion.
Okay, so let's talk about this particular IMF's World Economic Outlook for October.
Yeah.
You already mentioned regarding the economic growth, which has already been forecast by IMF. It's different from that which has been made by both the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. Why do you think these projections are different?
I think IMF report just came when this first quarter data was already coming out. So they were the first one to see this data and do this. And I think the other, these multinationals and others would, based on the data, they would also change their predictions.
Okay, there is one forecast regarding the annual population growth in this particular IMF World Economic Outlook. Now, that supersedes from the economic growth, which happens to be below. That's forecast at 2.5%. Annual population growth is forecast at 2.6%. So the IMF, do you think this particular difference is going to lead into more problems like increased poverty and more unemployment, because the projection regarding unemployment is also increased in this particular outlook?
Yes, that's what has been happening, because in the last few years, our growth rate was really low. I mean, except for some odd year, 1 year maybe it had gone up to 6%, but otherwise it was low. I mean, mostly it remained below 3%. And it's about the same as population growth. That's why our poverty rates have gone up to 40%, which is very high. But next year, IMF expects that our growth will, I mean, they've again changed that, their expectations as well. They are expecting more than 5% growth. So that should be good. And perhaps it could build on that.
Right. Ms. Hannan, what do you think? Why are these projections by different multilaterals are different, especially one made by the IMF, very different from that of the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank? And it's a significant jump from an earlier forecast of 0.5% contraction that was witnessed last year, that was done by IMF.
Right. So these institutions, projections made by these institutions are regularly reviewed. So in the last review, obviously they were expecting the numbers that they had. They were expecting a lower growth. But for example, the GDP right now that officially has been announced by our authorities will be revised down once we will have numbers for the whole fiscal year 23. Obviously, these numbers are revisited and the final numbers are shared before the economic survey of following year. So last year's GDP is expected to contract, rather increase by 0.3%. They are expecting a contraction of around 0.5%. So with a low pace and with a recent high frequency indicators such as you can say, if I talk about LSM, so although it has shown a slight decline in the outgoing months, but it is expected to improve going forward, is supported by slightly accommodative policies that we are expecting in the latter half of this year. And secondly, also with we recently saw numbers, cement dispatches numbers, and then we have got auto sales numbers, and then we have fertilizer numbers, DAP, urea. All these numbers are now showing improvement with the onset of this fiscal year. So I think, so with base effect and with these recent high frequency indicators showing improvement, the overall GDP growth is and was bound to improve compared to last year. However, as far as the sustainability of this growth rate is concerned, I think, unfortunately, Pakistan's growth, whenever we talk about economic growth, so it comes with a cost, and the cost is that we are consumption-led economy. There's nothing wrong about it as long as we are not importing beyond a certain point. But we saw this last year as well. Our current account deficit bloated, and then although we recorded a growth of 6% last year, but that came with a cost, right? So this point needs to be addressed. We need to grow at a sustainable rate, and rather than posting 2 consecutive years of 6+% growth, I think a decent and a sustainable growth of 3 to 4% seems fine. And I think with numbers coming in, and if all goes well, if hopefully, inshallah, we don't face any other natural calamities such as floods that we saw last 2 years, that impacted our agricultural output and sector's growth. Then we had this tight macroeconomic policies, which hopefully going forward we might see reversing, and with inflation coming down. So we might see industrial sector performing as well, if not at a growth rate that was seen last year, but at a decent growth rate of around 2 to 3%. And then obviously when your agriculture sector performs and your industry performs, then your services sector also supports the overall economic growth. And with trade volumes improving, we will see improvement in the services sector growth as well. So all indicators right now are hinting towards a decent recovery, and hopefully we will end this fiscal year with a growth rate of around 2 to 3%.
Vice President Research at Habib Limited, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. In the studio, we were joined by Dr. Manzoor Ahmad, Trade Arbitrator at the World Trade Organization and member of the Task Force on Tax and FBR Reforms. Thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.